What's up, good people? Welcome back to Four Titles, One Truth. You know who I am. I'm Tommy.
And I'm Lance. Today we're asking a question that hits a little different if you ever worn a uniform. How much does the person sitting in the Oval Office affect the people that are wearing the boots?
Yeah, so we're talking about real impact of the leadership at the highest level,
Yep,
the presidency,
absolutely.
and how different presidents shaped our experiences in the Army.
Yep, different commanders, different worlds. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's go.
Were you aware of politics when you first joined, and did it even matter to you at that time?
So, yes, I was aware. Once again, I joined at 19. So I was aware because the Gulf War had just happened. And I've always known who served in president. I know it's probably because of school.
Right.
I never considered whether I was a Democrat or Republican until much later on in my military career. But the thing about the first George Bush is the fact that the Gulf War, even though it didn't have a major impact on my decision to join, it had an impact on me joining.
Okay.
So that's what made me aware of it. And after that, I absolutely remember who ran for president with him, who ran for president after him, and who became president on and on.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty amazing that you did come in during the time where we were at war, where you know that people were
Well, it just
deploying
ended.
stuff.
Yeah, it just ended. Yeah. But it was during that time where America was almost overdoing it, hyping up because the war went so well, and it was live and on TV.
That's
So
right, live
you
and in effect.
you couldn't help but be touched by it. But it absolutely was. It was a small trigger within me that when someone, a recruiter, talked to me about joining the military, that was absolutely on my mind when I made the decision to join. What about you? Were you aware of politics? Because you were
I was. I mean, I didn't. I was in at that
school?
time. Yeah, at the beginning, I was in school. So
Okay.
'90. So that was George Bush, and again, like the war and all. So I mean, I would just come in. I wasn't following real deep. Was like just like you. I was aware of the of politics just because I was old enough to vote.
Right.
Finally old enough to vote for the first time and do all of those things. And then just watching parents and listening to them talk about it. But it didn't have didn't have an effect on like, oh, I'm not going to do ROTC because
Yeah.
of this president or because of this situation that's going on now in the world. So it didn't start hitting me too hard till it got later on, and then when I finally got in, then start paying a little more attention to it. So.
And I will just say this, that once you join the military, you are forced to focus on the pictures on the wall.
Yes.
From the president down. So specifically when you go through basic training, you absolutely know the chain of command, and you absolutely know who the president is. So that's a given. And I still can vividly remember his face
Sit
on the wall, in basic training. So once again, I joined in 1991. Okay, so that leads me to this question. Which president's leadership most impacted your experience while serving, and how did you feel that influence down the chain?
Probably whenever they really started downsizing, and I know
Just real quick, you came into the military, college, military, what year?
90, 90 to 95 was
No, you graduated in 90.
from high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you went to college, so 94 was when you officially was in the Army?
No,
What was that?
95.
95.
When I got commissioned. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I
Got
did
it.
an extra year. I did the 5-year plan.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, but you were saying
Yeah. So
which president impacted
so
your experience?
well, I mean, it was probably a couple,
Right.
because in early on when it was 95 or
Mm-hmm.
so, that's when Clinton
Mm-hmm.
was president. Um, I don't know what was I don't know. I still don't know what was going on, but I know that we were downsizing because we were losing a lot of
Yeah.
nurses. I mean, a lot of medical folks were getting riffed.
Yeah.
So they were either out the army. I could say that out of the army,
Yeah.
because a lot of folks were going from the army over to the Air Force,
Yeah.
and that I would see like 15 years later, and they say, "Oh, remember?" I was like, "Yeah, we were in the same class."
Yeah.
And then from there, probably going to Obama, and and I mean, I know that we'll probably talk about this a little bit later in this, but I mean, it was just such a different, felt like a different atmosphere, having a black president. Uh, one,
Personally or in the military?
well, personally and in
Okay.
the military,
Okay.
because a lot of people were I mean, they would. I think a lot of people's colors started coming out a little more whenever Obama, just to see that, some folks who you didn't necessarily feel were biased. I
Okay.
don't want to say racist, but were I mean, I guess some people's biased tendencies and willingness to speak out and critique. That's the word. To critique the
President Obama.
president. Yeah, seemed like it was a little looser,
Okay.
a little easier for him with Obama than with others.
So would you say President Obama was the first one to where you were really into politics?
Start paying attention to
Okay.
us. I mean, just because,
Yeah.
and then also because before he even ran for presidency, president,
Mm-hmm.
and when he was a representative, because he's from Illinois. Well, he's not from Illinois, but he was
Right.
representative from Illinois.
Right.
I mean, he was just. It was just uplifting. It was motivational. It was. I mean, all of those things
Yeah.
that.
So you had knowledge, way more knowledge than a lot of people of him before.
Oh, I mean,
the
just
president
the
got it.
pride. I mean, just the pride and
Got it.
going home and listening to people talk about,
Right.
talk about him, and this young. I mean, he's older than me, but they would parents, and I could say this
Young
young
for
guy.
politics,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
he reminds me of this. Back when they're coming up, during their different movements and
Right.
things like that. So I mean, it was, and then just the idea of having a president that looked like
Right.
me and my wife, and look. I mean, it was like, okay, it's about time, because you see all of the great things that black folks have done, but why wasn't anybody good enough to be at that level?
Right.
And that, yeah. I mean, so. Yeah, I mean, so that was probably, he was one I know that affected how we looked at things and gave a little bit more pride and wanting to excel and succeed a little more in the military, to go that little extra mile, because it's like, hey, because you want to try to take care of that.
Pride
Yeah,
boost. No, I get it.
try
I get it.
to do your best and a little bit, little more.
Right.
And then after Obama, when Trump came into office,
Yeah.
it really, you really start seeing some true colors coming
It's a
out
little
on
stronger
people.
than just
Yeah,
an opinion.
started some true colors coming out, and just the nation as a whole. It just, to me, I feel like it just exposed a lot of our, when I say ignorance, I'm saying, put it in the meaning that
It's actual
people just
meaning.
don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
people just don't know, or are not informed enough to call shit.
Right.
And then if they're not calling out, they believe in those politics or whatever they're going through, which are like, that's not what we stand for. That's not what we stand for, or
Right.
what they're trying to say that we Yeah, what we so that brought out a lot, which was kind of a nerve wracking,
Right.
little embarrassing sometimes on the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because we would have a lot of folks come from different, to do training, medical training and stuff with us, and asking us questions about,
Well, yeah.
hey, does your? It's like, no, that's not.
Well,
You know,
remember we was in France.
yeah, yes.
We were sitting
So
down. So both of our wives and well, Lance's wife and me and Nikki, we were in Marseille, France, and we were sitting in a restaurant. And this ain't a flex, even though I could start, hey, there one time in Marseille. But anyway,
no,
and we were sitting down at a restaurant, and the owner's wife, she took a liking to us, and she kept talking and having fun and whatever, and then
because we're likable people anyway.
valid point, valid point. And then during that time, they were going through a presidential race to where they had a very strong far right Republican running, and they compared him to Trump. And her words were Trump antics, right? That's how she described him. And then, so she was, after she had gotten comfortable with us, she sat down and she was she didn't sit down, but she was standing right there for a while and asked us about, she was asking us as if she wanted to prepare for what could come if that candidate won.
Yep.
And that was a very interesting conversation, because out of all my years and all my years of travel, never had someone just directly come up and ask me about the presidency.
Yeah. But you could answer at that time. That's what I told her. I said that they can, I'm still on active duty.
Yeah. I was free. So my answer to the question is, I'll just go down the line.
Go ahead.
Right? So the first president, I talked about the first Bush, he impacted my experience because it was after the war. And if you don't know, the military cycle continuously happens all over again. And one of the major cycles is before a war, the military builds up. They try to get as many people as possible because, of course, you need people to fight. This is no secret. After war, guess what? They get rid of it.
Yep.
And the honest answer for that, or the honest reason for that, is because of money, right? During war, you have wartime money, and you're also trying to win the war. So throwing money at trying to get people in the military is needed.
Yep.
And then once the war is over, then you don't have them extra funds, because now you need to start throwing money other places, and there's no war to win. So you start to cut the numbers.
Or downsizing.
Right. And so when I first came in, that's when they started really enforcing the weight standards. And we lost a lot of very qualified people because of weight standards. And I'm not trying to say that being in the military, you have to meet the standards and all that stuff. What I am saying is, once you change policies and then initiate them immediately, no matter what that policy is, there's going to be people who are going to be caught on the other side of it. And during that time, it was the enforcement of the overweight program, and it also was time and grade, to where they started to pay attention of how your career was advancing.
Yeah, all of the early retirements and things like that.
And so and they started offering that 15-year retirement, and that impacted me, because it sort of really let you know that it's a numbers game. If you were mature enough in the military mind to understand what was going on, then you really started to understand that the only way you can survive the military completely is by being top tier. Because top tier people, all around top tier people, you're never going to get rid of them unless, of course, they do something stupid, right? And then we go into Clinton. That was the don't ask, don't tell era, right? And I was a drill sergeant then.
That's right.
And remember, Clinton did 8 years. But what really affected me as a senior drill sergeant was the 21 questions for Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the 21 questions were, if someone, because simple breakdown, the recruiter gets you into the military, right? And then from you signing that paperwork, you have a ship date. Mm-hmm. And then that ship date sends you to basic training. And then in basic training, you have a couple days to get issued all your stuff. And then you go into basic trainings. Mm-hmm. It used to be 9 weeks, then it got knocked down to 8 weeks, right?
Okay.
With a rumor of going to 10 weeks. But whatever the weeks were, when I was a drill sergeant, you would come to I was one of the training units, Bravo Company, you know what I'm saying? Bravo Bulldogs, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I ain't going to go off on that. But I am a drill sergeant. No, I ain't going to give the creed. But anyway, so when the soldiers come there, that first day, that's their first day in the Army, right? And during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, they were never asked if they were homosexual. Okay. And so, but since you couldn't ask, mm-hmm. they gave you 21 questions that if they answered any of those questions, yes, then they were to be separated from the military. And the reason that affected me is not because of the homosexual thing. It affected me because some trainees mm-hmm. found out about that. And then they would try to use that to get out. Yes. And that was a mess because the company commander was limited to those 21 questions. And it was
if they said it, then they were.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Even if you never believed it. But once again, that was the process. And then you go from there. And then, of course, when the second Bush came, mm-hmm. war on terrorism. That's a long list. The way that impacted my experience is war. You know what I'm saying? But I'll give us
absolutely for us.
I'll just say that going to war is one thing, but I was a drill sergeant in 2005, mm-hmm. and so training soldiers who know they're going to war, that's a whole nother thing. And it's one of those things where you care about your job already, but now you have to care about your job and you have to do your best to ensure that these soldiers have a chance of survival.
Trying to train them, and then I'm sure that you saw some that were like, oh my God.
You're like, what in the world? Yeah, but the thing is, they're not going home. You know what I'm saying? Because if you remember, that's when they started to raise the age of who can join the military because war and you need people, right? Mm-hmm. And also we're burning out the people. But anyway, mm-hmm. that's how that really impacted me. And I had a very unique lens to look through being a drill sergeant. And then you throw in Obama. I understand the pride that you felt. I absolutely get that because it did feel empowering to me as an individual, mm-hmm. right? Because growing up in the time frame that we grew up, there absolutely was a ceiling, a hard ceiling on where kids of our color could imagine where we could go, right? And
realistic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those ceilings were only removed by seeing it removed. For instance, we absolutely thought we could make it in sports, because we saw black people playing sports all the time.
Excelling.
Yeah, absolutely. We thought we could be teachers because we saw black people being teachers. We thought we could be lawyers because you could sometimes see a black lawyer. All right. If the glove don't fit.
Doctors, yeah, I mean, you must have quit.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen any black doctors when I was younger, you know. So I can't use that as a reason
my
why I didn't want to be a
pediatrician
doctor.
was Dr. Piper.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that ceilings are removed when kids specifically can see that there are different routes you can
Getting
take.
that actual hard fact that you can,
absolutely
that
to
tangible
open up, right? Because
touch.
in my opinion, a kid's imagination should be unlimited, right? And the only way that can be guaranteed is by things seeming normal, right?
Yep.
And so seeing a black president was normalcy for millions of people, right? And not just black people, other races as well of born Americans. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, but at the same time, Obama did some things that affected the military part of me when it came to downsizing, because it used to be a norm because it was taught to me by leaders that I was serving under that while Democrats were in office, the military was no longer the focus of the government.
Right. We didn't get any.
Absolutely. We didn't get money.
Money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we had to lower what money we needed. So that meant cutting soldiers. That meant cutting positions.
Had to tighten up
Absolutely.
what is it, the button, the buckle, the belt loops.
Yes. And that meant losing bases as well, right? And so there was that effect going on through Obama. But I will say just another thing that affected us was when President Obama opened up combat
to women.
combat assignments to women, being able to serve in combat MOS jobs. That was an amazing thing as
Yes,
well.
it was.
So bottom line is I could go through every president that I served under, and I specifically remember how their different leadership or their different policies, we'll say that, affected my experience while I was still in the military. Yeah, so it's an honest thing where you can sit there and say that.
I mean, and I think people need to understand that when we're on active duty, when we're serving,
Yes.
we can't criticize, talk about, or I mean, so people understand where we're coming from.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean, you can have an opinion,
Yes.
but you can have opinion to yourself right here,
right.
you know, but you can't be openly talking to the press or talking to your troops or to your staff or whatever, where you're,
Because you're a servant.
Yeah,
You're a servant to your leadership all the way up to the president, and you're a servant to your country. And so the standard for the military, for those serving in the military, is you represent your country, and you are supposed to positively represent
the leader of the country. Yeah, I mean,
well, the whole process.
Country, yeah,
absolutely. So you're very limited on what you can say.
Right, and we still, I mean, we vote and do all of those the normal things. We'll vote for president. We can vote for mayor, and I mean all of those congressmen and congressmen and women, and all of those things. So,
and like you said, everybody has an opinion in the military.
Yes. Oh yes.
It's just you're very limited to who you can share that with.
Yes.
And if you're smart and you're a leader, you keep it to yourself when it comes to your politics.
Yeah.
But you still have to adjust to the policies and the standards that are established.
See, in working in the hospital, we have a lot. Probably where I worked, probably around a lot more civilians than you did while you were.
Without a doubt.
Were in. So civilians can have pledge allegiance, can raise up whoever their person is, and you have to be there and just nod your head and keep. I mean, however much you agree or disagree.
Yeah. Because you're
Yeah, you
responsible
don't.
for the work atmosphere. You know
Yes,
what I'm saying? You're
the
responsible
morale,
for
the
absolutely
the
and
environment.
being that image of a soldier.
Yes.
And that
So,
that's hard hitting.
yep.
That's hard hitting.
But when you retire, you can talk about it.
Let it go.
Yep.
But the thing is, you're not really letting go of America. You're letting go of the time, because no matter what level of leadership, it's going to impact those that are under that leadership. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
We talk about a McDonald's manager, the personality of that McDonald's manager, the additional rules or the additional enforcement of the already there rules is going to change based on who that person is in that seat. So just imagine if it can be a McDonald's manager, imagine that effect on the president of the United States and all those people that are serving directly under him.
All right. Did the morale or the perception of the military change? Did you notice any of that during your time that you were serving?
Oh yeah.
Depending on who was in charge. Yeah, depending on who the president was.
Yes.
Okay.
Once again, I'll just say policies affect change, right?
Yep.
And so every new commander is coming in with their own policy or their own way of doing things. And soldiers and leaders, you have to adapt.
Yep.
That's just the bottom line. But absolutely, man. Just going down the list again, the don't ask, don't tell, there was a lot of pushback for that. Because during that time, the military, there were incidents of soldiers being beat up and killed because they were assumed to be homosexual. So that was a real thing. So when that don't ask, don't tell, that basically meant that you now no longer have the right to know somebody's sexual orientation. And that ticked a lot of people off, you know, and because once again, it was a different time back then. And then I'll go back to Obama. I didn't feel the racial charge that you had mentioned with Obama, but I absolutely felt it when President Trump, his first time, because I was at the academy, Sergeant Major's Academy, and when Trump was his inauguration and when he won, right? And so at the Sergeant Major's Academy, the Master Sergeant promotables, right, or the Master Sergeants who have been selected to attend the academy, you are going to that highest level, the Sergeant Major, right? And so it's expected for you to have hard conversations because the goal at the academy is to get everybody on a sheet of music.
Okay.
Okay. So
whether you agree
the life
or not,
is, the reality is you're never going to be on the same sheet of music with 700 other people, right? You can have the Army values and be linked that way, but your personal opinions, your personal politics and all that stuff are your race, gender, all that stuff, or there's going to be differences, okay? And so when President Trump was elected the first time, I absolutely was one of those that, because I was a servant, you know, to the military as well as to my country, I always, when a president was elected, I always was like, okay, all I can do is hope for the best, right? Because absolutely, because my opinion is not something that I can go around enforcing, right? And at that time, Master Sergeant on the way to daggone Sergeant Major. But the conversations we were having at the academy, the sides that some of my brothers and sisters were taking, it was a little shocking sometimes. But the good thing about that is we are well past scared to voice your opinion and have real conversations because the majority of all sergeant majors are alphas, and I just keep saying alpha prime because My Way or the Highway was a real cadence that I used to sing. And we changed it because it shouldn't be that way. But anyway, but I remember we were in a class and we were on our way to lunch. And in our class, we'd have basically between 16 people, give or take. And we were walking to the dining facility for lunch. And just so you know, when you go to the academy, you go for a certain amount of time, which is a long time. And it's basically like going to college for a year, but Army college for a year. And so you really get to know people and you really get to spend time with your peers, your literal peers, because you all are going through the same process at the same time, and you're going to be the next
group of leaders,
the next group of sergeants majors, right? And while we were there, we were talking about there was Floyd.
Oh.
And I think that was the one. But anyway, I can't remember specifically, and I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want a comment to be that I'm wrong about that. Was that. It was 16.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly.
Was
but
it
anyway,
Floyd or was it the kid in
I can't remember.
In St. Louis, Brown?
I can't remember the name.
Okay.
But either it was an incident where a cop killed, a white cop killed a black kid. Right, or a black person. I'm not sure. But anyway.
I think that was Brown.
I can't remember.
Okay.
But anyway, the comment made by a white, and he was a friend, considered a friend at that time because we had met there and we had bonded and we was cool. But the comment was, I just don't get why these people keep getting shot. When a cop pulls you over, all you have to do is just say, hey, not react. I'm smart enough, and this was legitimate comment. And while we were walking to the dining facility, we call it the DFAC, and I was like, I was listening, and he was like, because even I know that if I get pulled over by the cop, that cop is in charge. And then it's my responsibility to hear what they're saying and not cause a situation and get through it. I've been pulled over by the cops before, right? And
it's a different level.
It's not only is it a different level from an assumption, but it's also a different level when me as a black man have been in situations with cops to where I was understanding that they're in charge and it's their show, and I am I am not shining at all in this moment because they're stopping me because they see something that I've done wrong.
But that's part of the problem, though, I think, is that you'll see black individuals getting pulled over that aren't doing anything.
Oh,
well, I mean, so yeah, okay, my bad. Okay,
and so
because I got a story about that too. That had happened to me while I was in college.
And the reason I know about that process is because my dad told me about that process. My dad told me that if at any point ever, my black dad said that if any point ever you are stopped by a cop, and this was before I was driving, it was walking around our neighborhood. I was I think I was in junior high school, so 7th or 8th grade. And that was when I was starting to hang out beyond my block. And Dad, he sat me down and told me, he was like, hey, boy, he's like, if you, and that's how he referred to me, if you are ever approached by a cop, he said, the first thing you do is shut your mouth. And he said, that's all you do, unless he asks you a question and you answer. And I was like, I didn't have a rebellious bone in my body at that time. So I thought it was just common sense. And then he actually jab me because he used to punch me, like play around. And he actually jabbed me. He was like, "Do you hear what I'm saying?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "No, you're not hearing what I'm saying." And then he started to explain some of his experiences. So um, he was absolutely highlighting to me that I have to be perfect when I'm around police, because if not, I can either be arrested, which could lead to me being beaten, which could lead to me being killed.
Yep.
That's how that conversation went, all right, with my dad in seventh or eighth grade. Now, after that, I had now experienced what my dad was talking about, right? So there were nights we were going to the club, and I had never drank anything or did any drugs. Still haven't done drugs, but anything, alcohol or anything like that, until I was 25 in the Army. Yeah. Never, right? Because I always considered myself athletic, and I always tried to keep my body locked in, right? And the lesson of my parents: drugs are the devil. Alcohol is the devil. So that's a whole other episode of Four Titles, One Truth, because I was raised, my mom, in a Christian home. Okay. So drugs and alcohol were not even, it was around me because I was raised in a black neighborhood. I knew the smells of it, but I was never, ever wanting of any of that. Right. I'm talking crack. I'm talking marijuana. I'm talking any kind of alcohol. I'm talking LSD, any of those things. Never sniffed. Well, I've smelled it, but never touched any of that, never ingested any of that in my body, right? So I was always the designated driver. And so one night, I think I was just got my license, so probably 10th or 11th grade. And we were at a gas station. And we were at a gas station with other people. I mean, other cars. Other races, because Middletown is not, there's a black side to Middletown, but it's not majority black. And so I'm at a gas station with my friends, and we were playing music, but we weren't playing it crazy. And I wasn't drunk, and my boys, we were all athletes. So none of us drank, right? And a cop pulled over, and of course we're all aware of the cop. Pulled over and was sitting in the shadows of the gas station, and we were just, hey, it's 5-0. That's what we always say. So we made sure we turned the music down even more. And this whole time I'm out pumping gas, and then my boys were either in the car or at the car with me, and we were talking, or they were in there getting some snacks or something. So, we were I'd gotten gas. We were waiting on one person. And while we were waiting, all of a sudden, lights came on from the cop, and them jokers zoomed right to us and blocked us in. And another cop, they were waiting on another cop, zoomed right behind us, right? And so we're sitting there like, what in the world is going on? And the first thing that cop said, with their weapons in their hand, were freeze, right? And then get out of the car. And then over the mic, they said, we found the suspect, blah, blah, blah. And so I knew how to react in that situation. I was scared the crap out of me, but I knew how to react because my dad had told me that. That's just one incident. And I was still in high school, right? And so hearing this guy I thought was a friend making that comment, I was like, he is a friend, so let me explain. And I'm sitting there explaining my experiences, and not aggressively, just sitting there. And once again, we're walking to the dining facility. And do you know that joker said, well, it could happen sometimes, but all of these happening like this, that's just not realistic. And it's just, And this is an experience that it's not just a Tommie experience. It's a black man experience because I was raised up and by and around a bunch of black men, and I got a black man over here, and we have similar experiences. So
Yep.
I'll just say that during Trump, it absolutely empowered
Made it real easy.
people who normally kept racial conversations to themselves, or their racial disgust of treatment of situations and all that. It opened that up amazingly.
Well,
and that
it made it easy, front
fair
page,
game. Absolutely.
normal.
Absolutely. Made it
Like
a
it was
talkable
right. Yeah.
subject. And that, being a sergeant major and then hearing some of these conversations, and the best thing that you can do as a sergeant major in that situation is squash. When you're in charge of an element, right, is squash those conversations and try to keep everybody focused on
the mission.
the 7 Army values and the mission. That's the way you get through it. So yes, there were absolutely policies that affected the change, and there was also the a nasty change in the air when that specific president came online. So that was very interesting to me.
Yep.
But I will say, the Republicans backing the military and the Democrats seemingly backing the military, Republicans, and the Democrats not. It's easy to fall in and see, if you look over history, how that is true. But at the same time, you have to look at who initiated wars and why were they so supportive of the military during their tenure as president. Is it because we were at war?
And
Absolutely.
things like that. It was
So there's a whole
money
bunch of
being
things
made.
you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a lot for me. What about you?
I think it's similar.
Okay.
I mean, all of those. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely true, and the different stories about being pulled up. I mean, it's perception.
Yes.
And folks not understanding that they don't talk to you the same way they talk to me, or when they pull me over, they already have 10 things already in their mind that
the biggest one.
Yeah, that I've done or could do, or those types of things, as opposed to you, if you're getting pulled over for speeding or whatever, then they're just going straight to, here's your ticket, you were speeding, don't speed again, get out of here. They're not looking for anything else, especially if you're older. Younger, you get.
And this has been my thing with police. If police can go in with a conversation, because one thing going to combat taught me, and one thing going into combat and actually being in the same place, or same area as the enemy, you set the tone when you have a weapon. And your ability to set the tone absolutely affects the outcome.
Yeah,
of that
I mean,
situation.
and that's the thing. I would say that we're not saying that police are the enemy. So it's just a matter of how you're approaching folks and treating the situation on both sides.
Yeah.
So you can't start off from the beginning being combative, and then, because if you do that, then you're going to get that same energy back at you. So
Absolutely. And that goes for the cop, and it also goes for the person that they're approaching.
Yeah.
If you automatically jump up and get in your kung fu stance, or act like you're reaching for a weapon, we understand that set the tone, and now you go from controlling a situation to reacting to a situation.
But again, I worked around a lot of civilians, so different presidents, they had their opinions about things, so that could have had the morale, different ways, and I just didn't want them, and because we have a lot of young soldiers. Young soldiers are can be influenceable, or can be influenced. So you just don't want them you have to remind them, hey, this
Bring them
is
back to the Army.
this is right.
Absolutely.
This is what you need to follow. You can,
Absolutely.
don't act the same way that Mr.
Absolutely.
Such and such, or don't use. I don't need to hear you saying what Mr. or Mrs. Such and such was spewing out. That's not you here in this environment right here. So,
and that's where the teaching of the Army core values, right, and also the teaching of what the 5 W's of a soldier. That's where you have to, as a leader, you have to bring everybody back to the center line. And the center line is the Army standard. Mm-hmm. When you're serving in the military, it's the military standard. And the closer you can get everybody to that center line of the military standard, the more likely you're going to develop an outstanding soldier or airman or whatever branch, B, a better person, right? And then C, a better leader. Because once you start to think, you're in the military, and once you start to, your mind starts to work with a military mindset, then you're able to keep everybody focused on that center line. I'll just keep it that simple. All right, so my question, how did policy shifts like deployments or budget cuts directly affect you and your soldiers?
And I'm speaking on the side of being in the medical side in the hospitals, is when folks would deploy, we would lose people in the hospital.
Yeah, because they had to go to the fight.
And just because we lost people in the hospital doesn't mean that we went down in care. Yeah, went down in the number of folks that we were seeing. Right. So trying to get backfills, trying to get contract civilian hires and things like that in. Yeah. So money would control like our personnel and what our capabilities would be in order to run our facility. Right. That would never, just because we were having a situation in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever, we still had to, and our people would have to go, and like and some of our civilians that were reserve would sometimes have to get called up and would have to go. So it's like trying to stay ahead of that game and anticipate. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna need this, and then just hoping that the money was gonna be there, because it was hitting everybody. It wasn't just my area; it was the whole hospital, and then it was going back up the chain where you're trying to get the commander to prioritize. Like, okay, what do you want? This is what we can do in our area with this, and trying not to do the same thing with what you're talking about earlier. It's about burning folk. People getting burned out from deployments. You don't want to burn people out here from working just
when they get called.
Just don't want them getting burned out, because civilians can say, I'm done with this. I'm going over to whatever. I'm going to the civilian spot over there. I don't have to, and I'm not going to work like this. The budget cuts, deployments, it was all in what we could do. What we were going to be able to do with our mission that we were doing. So because if we had a certain doc leave, we only had one of those guys or two of those guys. Then some of those surgeries would cut, which would be like, okay, good, but then that's not good, because then people aren't getting the training that they need, because that's our whole thing is just seeing the procedures, doing the procedures, that repetitive thing that get folks good and efficient. That you want to that you want to see, what you want to have, because that's how you can generate the dollars that come in that make your area or your profession relevant. So that you can defend when they're trying to make cuts and things. It'd be like, hey, we bring in this and we're able to do, so. Yes. But policy shifts and budget cuts and all of those things, they absolutely affect us, because we're not only taking care of the soldiers, we're taking care of veterans. We're taking care of family members. We're taking care of everybody. And then at certain hospitals, we also take care of civilians,
Yeah.
emergencies and things like that. So, and that's a whole nother story as far as getting paid for those services that
You
we're
wouldn't
not getting
normally get.
paid what they should be getting paid for. That they're getting the very little, the bare minimum, but we're still expected to
Maintain
do
the
those.
same level.
I mean,
Yeah.
and our folks do because it's also training for them. So
Yeah.
whenever we deploy, a lot of our folks have seen it
Yeah.
and are not,
Yeah.
So it benefits us some ways and it hurts
Yeah.
us in other ways. So yes, it
Absolutely.
absolutely affects. Yep.
It's. I mean, I can't. The only thing I can add to that is the fact that when you're talking about policy shifts, there are things. When policies change, you have to adjust yourself, right? And we talked about homosexual. We talked about women serving combat. We can go down to something as simple as facial hair. You know what I'm saying? So when policies change, you have to adjust yourself and adapt to be able to lead future soldiers. If you can't, then it's time for you to separate yourself.
Yep.
And that's one of those things. That's one of the downsides of being in 30 years, is that this is Tommy Jones's way of saying things. But every 10 years, there's going to be a major change. That's something that I've always believed, specifically when it comes to the military, but it's also in life. There's going to be a major change somewhere every 10 years. And so being there 30 years, that means I've seen a minimum of 3 major changes. And
not just uniform changes.
oh no, you know what I'm saying? And then I have to make sure that I'm okay with those changes, because that's one thing about the military. You're serving because you volunteered to serve.
Yep.
And if you no longer want to serve, then you reach your time limit that you signed up for, or your what you can serve, and it's time to go.
Yep.
Or you can make the decision to strive, push, maybe get more time added to it, right? And that's something that it's a decision that needs to be made. So the bottom line is, if you don't agree with some of the policies, then maybe it's time for you to separate yourself from the military. Or if you can't adjust and adapt to those changes in the policy. But when we talk about deployments and, talking about deployments, and he hit on it from one side, I'll hit it on the other side. You know, say you've been the first sergeant of a unit for a year, and then say you get deployed, you get orders to deploy, and you think that you've brought your soldiers up to a standard to where you're proud to take this unit downrange because you think you'll be able to execute your mission,
Right.
And make things better, and then come on back home with everybody. But now you've been there a year, and now all of a sudden you get the warning order saying, hey, y'all are going to deploy around this time. And so during that time, you've developed some outstanding non-commissioned officers, and now you got them out to be recruiters. They're going to be a recruiter in 6 months. They're going to be a drill sergeant in 7 months. They're going to be an instructor in 4 months, or they're going to a school that's going to take them from NCO to warrant officer. You're best of the best, you know what I'm saying? And you're sending your high-speed platoon sergeant, because now, hey, they've done their job. I want you to go to staff so that you can get an understanding of how staff works. Now all of a sudden you get this message, hey, you're deploying in, we'll say, 8 months. And I just signed away my top
Everybody.
12% of leadership, right? And now I have to replace those people, because you don't want to stop their career, because you wouldn't have put them in those positions if you didn't think they'd earn them, right? And now you have to hope and pray that you can get replacements that are at a minimum capable.
Yep.
Not over capable, but capable. and you have to deal with the nervousness and fear of the replacements, and then you have to deal with the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, as we call it, and the motivations of the unit to make sure that they're still locked in on what the standards and expectations of the unit are. And I'm going to tell you something, no matter what unit you go to, there's a difference in leadership and expectations. All right. Some leaders are stronger and harder. Some units are stronger and harder. Some units are less. It's just a whole bunch of things. So deployments knock that up. And then budget cuts, you're losing stuff. No matter what you're doing, if you're losing something, it's going to make it harder. So it's going to affect you. It's going to affect the soldiers. But from a leadership's perspective, it's hard to continuously adapt and also ensure that your soldiers know that you're not just bull crapping. You know what I mean? So if a standard or policy comes down and change that you were so adamant against and so locked in on, and now there's a change, and now all of a sudden
you got to support it.
Yeah, the soldiers know that. And you have to have the ability to explain to them and then build them back up so that they'll still follow you, to war and back.
Make it work.
Absolutely. So it's a thing. It's legitimate question, and it's a thing that absolutely you just have to adjust to. There's nothing you can do about that. Yeah.
All right. If you could tell any president one thing about the reality of leading troops, what would you tell them? What would it be?
All right. I could get real technical, right?
I know that's true. But, that's right, don't we?
It's the main thing that I would emphasize, and it's not something that any other leader wouldn't say, is that we as soldiers, right, we understand that we're pawns on a daggone chessboard. We understand that. We know that the higher up you are, the less that individual at the bottom matters, right? It doesn't mean you don't care about them. It just means how much that bottom person affects your decision-making capabilities, right? But just remember that we're pawns with faces. We're not just a thing. We have family and friends and kids and all that stuff. And when you're making these strategic level decisions, just keep that in mind as a known factor when you're making these decisions, right?
I hear you.
And so me in a perfect world, if I had Tommie Jones's perfect world, I would say that before you can serve in Congress, before you can serve as the president, I believe that you should have some time in the military. Now, I know that the separation and the addition of civilians in the box, bringing their outside of the box, familiarity outside, inside the box is valuable. I understand that, right? I'm just saying in my perfect world, because when you're making real decisions and you've served in the military, it helps you remember not just the military years you spent, but it brings back everything, your childhood, it brings back your high school, it brings back, so if you served in the military, you've sort of been forced to work with everybody, and you have experience with a lot of cultures that you may or may not have grown up with.
Yep.
And it just opens up your experiences so that when you make these strategic, the highest level decisions, I absolutely believe that would help you make some of those decisions instead of just blindly making them, which is why civilians have military subordinates and partners and correspondents, right? So that they can get the experience and the recommendations from those that have served it, but I just feel in my perfect world,
I hear you.
that could help.
I hear you. I think. I mean, I agree with you. But I think that the military gives you that exposure to all of to different cultures and
Yes.
races and things
And
that
that's valuable.
that a lot of the senators and representatives and presidents and things that we have nowadays
Don't touch.
get,
Absolutely.
because a lot of these guys are coming in and they're all, which I don't know if people understand, some of these guys are already millionaires and multimillionaires coming in, so they have never, been to school with black people or Asian people or Hispanic people or anything like that. Some of them, so it's a different 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 world where you sit down and you got to eat across from somebody, or
that
you're
you'll be
sleeping in
touched
bunk
with.
beds,
Or you
so that
got
you
to dig
understand,
a fighting position with,
so that you understand. I
Yeah.
mean, and at least, I mean, I don't know if everybody would, if it's a realistic goal in our country now, to have everybody serve in the military before they could get on the
Tommie's perfect world. I'm not saying
yeah.
we got to make this happen. I'm just saying.
but in Lance's perfect world, I mean, I think that they definitely should have some type of military experience when they're getting on some of these committees that are dealing with, making military decisions and the defense. They have to have some type of going back to the president, they have to be compassionate.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be compassionate, because a lot of us, we were in, and a lot of folks that are in now, they know the risk and the responsibility that they're taking. We signed up for it. We did. That's what I would always tell people, is like, I signed up for it, so I know what I'm doing. But I just would want you want to see your leader be compassionate and encouraging going in, so that and to at least give you the notion or the thought that they care and they're there for you, and they're going to do what they can so that you can get back home. People don't want to see and somebody that's beating their chest, arrogance, beating their chest, and what you're doing is like, you're not doing it. We're our guy, we're the ones on the ground carrying out all of this stuff. So,
and let me be perfectly clear. I'm not saying that they should serve in the military so that they can make favorable military decisions. I'm saying exactly what Lance was saying, is that by being in the military, you are taken out of your norm.
yes.
And you are basically forced to initiate relationships with people who don't normally fit in your day-to-day.
It's what you said. It opens up your thought process to another room, another realm of being able to go, okay.
So I don't want no pushback. We're talking about they want a military leader because it
not
has
at all.
nothing to do with the actual branch of service. It has to do specifically with, in the military, you are taken out of your slice and put in another slice. So now, here's a perfect example. I was born and raised in a black neighborhood. I'm talking blocks around me were all black people. A white person maybe was in the neighborhood every block or so, right? But the neighborhood was black, right? If I hadn't had the opportunity that my parents gave me to go to a Christian school, which was an all-white school, or I didn't have the opportunity, which the city gave me, of going to a public school that was majority white. If I would have just stayed in my neighborhood and there was a black elementary, black junior, and black high school, the only thing I'd know about white people is what I've seen on TV or what I've ran into when I left that environment. Mm-hmm. And there are black people like that in this world, and white people in every race like that, who are developed by the environment they were raised in. And that completely closes off your ability to bond and grow with other people.
Yeah.
And the military forces you to do that. That doesn't mean that you're going to leave kumbaya with everybody.
It helps you to see people for who they are
More
than what their
than
color of
what you
skin.
think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It helps you develop true experiences
Yep.
with these people of different races, cultures, and what have you, and allows you to develop a more informed opinion, self-opinion of that whole, what do you call it, collage of people. That's all. That's what I'm talking
Yep.
about. Okay. And I do think I benefited from it because when I see a white person, I'm not uncomfortable. When I see an Asian, when I see any of the races, I'm not uncomfortable because I've been around and been in those circles and I've been to the countries, of where these people originated. I've been to Africa where black people originated. I've been to South Korea where South Koreans originated. So I at least can have a sympathy and empathy for these different cultures, and
Yep.
that opens me up to being more understanding or engaging or what have you.
Yeah.
All right. Just bottom line is this. At the end of the day, no matter who's in office, soldiers still have to show up. But you better believe who's making those decisions at the top affects everything from morale to
That's
the
right.
mission. Excuse
So
me.
we keep saying leadership matters.
Yes.
Listen to us. Leadership matters at every level.
Amen. Hey, thank you for joining us. Follow us on Instagram, join us on YouTube, and tell your friends about this podcast. And we will promise to keep the conversation going.
Yep. Thank y'all.
All right. Holla.